Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I make videos on mental health, education, and self-improvement. Today I'm talking about psychotic depression, and this is based on a couple of viewer questions. Major depression is an illness where you can have a depressed or irritable mood, along with a number of other symptoms that affect your sleep, appetite, energy level, outlook on life, and more. You can be mildly, moderately, or severely depressed. We usually look at the level of functioning to estimate the severity of the depression. How are you functioning in your personal, work, and school life? Someone who is mildly depressed may have trouble getting out of bed and may struggle to find joy in things, but they still go to work every day and take care of responsibilities at home. A severely depressed person, however, may not be able to get out of bed, even if there are babies in the house crying for food. Even having people or finances depending on you isn't enough to get you going. Why? Because it's simply not a choice. When depression hits that hard, it takes over your will. Some people feel like their limbs are too heavy to lift. We call this leaden paralysis. It's not a real paralysis, it's a figurative term. Depression can also become so severe that you lose touch with reality and develop psychotic symptoms. These symptoms are delusions and hallucinations. However, delusions tend to be more common than hallucinations. The delusions can take on a persecutory or nihilistic tone. Persecutory delusions are when you feel attacked in some way. You may believe people are talking about you or trying to harm you. On several occasions, I've seen people with delusional depression who felt others were coming into their home. The evidence they gave was seeing objects moved around. For example, if a glass was shifted from one table to another, they believed it proved that someone had entered the house when no one was there. Another common persecutory delusion I've seen is the feeling of being followed. Each time I've heard this, the person would give examples, such as seeing the same cars driving by at the same time each day, or noticing a blue car parked on their street for several days in a row. Now, in reality, those cars could simply belong to people going to work, attending appointments, or visiting someone nearby. But to the delusional person, these ordinary explanations become evidence of some bigger, sinister plot. Nihilistic delusions are when you feel that things are senseless and have lost their value. Thoughts like, what's the point in life? Nothing matters. This kind of thinking can fuel suicidal thoughts or attempts. Sometimes suicide attempts are impulsive, but other times they are born out of these nihilistic delusions, where the person believes that nothing matters, life is meaningless, and even existence itself is senseless. Keep in mind, delusions are fixed false beliefs. For the delusional person, it's their truth. It's not just an opinion, it's a fact they think everyone should believe. These beliefs don't change just because they hear a good argument against them. Delusions are fixed, and no evidence to the contrary will make the person believe differently. The good news is that delusions can resolve as depression improves, or with medication intervention. This is different from the psychosis you would see in schizophrenia. With schizophrenia, delusions are not only present in the context of depression, or even mania for that matter. People with bipolar disorder who become manic can also develop delusions. But in this case, the delusions tend to be grandiose in nature. They can still be persecutory, but they carry this overarching theme of power and importance. For example, you might feel that people are following you because you've suddenly realized you're related to the royal family. Or you might believe the government is plotting to wipe out society using the internet. And you are specifically targeted because you've discovered a way to thwart their plans. Do you see the difference? With the depressed person, their thoughts are rooted in sadness, hopelessness, or fear of being harmed. With the manic person, the delusions revolve around power, purpose, and being at the very center of events. One more important point about delusions in the context of depression and mania. The delusions in psychotic depression tend to be non-bizarre, meaning they are technically possible, but not very likely. For example, it's possible that someone is sneaking into your home while you're away and moving your drinking glasses around just to send you a message that you're unsafe. That scenario is plausible, but in reality, people probably aren't spending their time doing that. By contrast, the delusions we see with schizophrenia are often more bizarre and implausible. For instance, a person may believe that some entity is removing their organs at night while they sleep and selling them overseas. Why is this implausible? Because we can't live without our organs. That may seem obvious, but to the psychotic person, it doesn't. If you point this out, they may respond with something like, well, that's the whole secret. We're all living without some of our organs. but you don't realize it because they're being taken out little by little. The delusions can become very convoluted. One of the challenges in recognizing psychotic depression is that the thoughts often feel like a natural extension of the depression itself. If you're already feeling very depressed and worthless, it doesn't occur to you to stop and say, "My thinking has gotten so extreme that I believe people are trying to harm me." It just feels like a natural progression of how bad you feel. Even people close to you may not realize that your thoughts have crossed the line into delusional thinking. A psychotic depression can occur at any age, but the incidence tends to increase as people get older, especially after age 60. How do we treat psychotic depression? For unipolar depression with psychotic features, treatment usually involves either antidepressants plus an antipsychotic medication or electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. Examples of antidepressants include fluoxetine, escitalopram, and venlafaxine. Examples of antipsychotics include quetiapine and aripiprazole. If you go the medication route, there isn't a fixed time that you must stay on the antipsychotic. However, you do need to stay on it long enough to ensure that the psychotic symptoms won't return. This usually means 3 out of 4 months. After that, it's often reasonable to taper off the antipsychotic while continuing the antidepressant for a longer period, typically 6 to 12 months. Why so long? Because stopping too early puts you at high risk for relapse. The brain needs 6 to 9 months to fully recover from a depressive episode. Now, psychosis and bipolar disorder is treated a little differently. That's because adding an antidepressant can actually be risky. It can trigger a manic episode or cause someone to rapid cycle between phases. I talk about the use of antidepressants in bipolar disorder in another video. For someone with bipolar disorder who develops psychosis, one option is electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, the same treatment we would consider for psychotic unipolar depression. For the medication route, the approach depends on what the person is already taking. If they're on no medication, you would start by adding an antipsychotic. If they're already on a mood stabilizer, you can still add an antipsychotic to their current regimen. For example, if someone is taking lamotrigine as a mood stabilizer, you could add quetiapine. If the person is already on quetiapine but still becomes psychotic, you could either increase the dose or add a second antipsychotic temporarily to bring the psychotic symptoms under control. I only mention quetiapine as one example because it's commonly used in bipolar disorder as a mood stabilizer. But since it is also an antipsychotic, it can treat both the mood symptoms and the psychosis when present. That's psychotic depression. Thanks for listening. See you next time.